Ever since high school, I had a complex fear of dying, one that may have seeded itself at a young age with the passing of my grandmother, but one that blossomed with the death of her father. I remember being on a one-rope swing in my other grandparents' home, thinking to myself, will this happen to me? And having to realize, at a young age, this noticing of it, death, will never truly leave, like a scar upon the mind. As of recently, this fear once again emerged. I'm 7 months unemployed now, and not even the put the fries in the bag jobs people mock, which is unfair. Those jobs are difficult for everyone. Are you even reading my resume anymore, let alone declining to hire me? I'm living in a home only through the grace of family far away from the other half of it, and I've racked up debt in that time, within the thousands of dollars. All my actions since the beginning of 2025 have been through running from that fear after my other grandmother passed away right after Thanksgiving in 2024. All my pains, all my sorrows, has stemmed from that feeling. But I've learned lessons since then, ones that I'm willing to share. If you're hearing the script, which I am most likely reading verbatim once more, then I'd like to announce that I'm taking further steps through what I've learned in the past year and a half. Hopefully good luck shines upon me once more, but the truth is life is like a shadow, one that embodies all of you, but to others is only a fleeting glimpse of light being blocked by another. And, in all conscious thought, I've come to a conclusion that is a great thing, a freeing notion, that one can live without direct impact and still truly enjoy life, whether or not that means anything to you in your journey of understanding this meaning on your own. The structure of this video goes as thus: the fear of death, why it's there, why it began in me, and how I noticed it after all this time. How that fear manifests, namely through the fear of failure, of irrelevancy, and of pain. How I'm overcoming it, through creating and doing without fear being a deciding factor, making systems and not goals to achieve true progress, and sitting with these dark emotions of dying and death to lessen their impact. The results of that by how I'm creating again, with the knowledge of how I view death and without regret, and how you or others can deal with the art of dying by facing it within yourself, lowering expectations, and through effort easing the pain these fears bring. Let's begin. Fear of death is something that is both natural to the human condition and one we're not necessarily born with. It's an instinctual desire to not die rather than fearing death itself. Very similar, but two different processes at work. When young, you learn that change and loss are inevitable, but you're born with the idea that things can last forever. Usually, and for me, it's when death comes to those that have been there, from your perspective, forever, that this fear manifests. It's that fear of it happening to you that describes it best. This fear comes about due to the nature of change in this world. Nothing lasts. With our ability to recognize patterns, we see one thing going away and apply that pattern to another. I remember my younger sister's first brush with death arriving through a fuzzy worm that was in our garage, brought into the Texas sun, only to perish. She cried with all her heart that day. I felt both distant to it and profoundly familiar to the emotion as well. As something that was alive can die without ever coming back, and that surely can apply to other living things. When we're younger, though, the idea doesn't necessarily hit home until someone close to us dies, or more specifically, something that makes you point the view of transience upon yourself. My grandmother's passing away was sad, and I cried when I remember her. I was only very young then, about 3 or 4, but I remember still showing her my Power Rangers toy while she was on her penultimate deathbed. I had no idea and thought she'd come back, but she never did. The fear hit home when my great-grandfather, her father, died. He was an Italian immigrant from Naples, born a decade or so after the turn of the century. I remembered when I was younger how I told him he'd be alive forever. I'd make sure of it, only for him to pass in the latter half of his 90s. We went to his home city, we had the funeral. I remembered specifically being in JROTC at the time, a high school thing for Americans where students practice dressing in military uniform and exercising as a group for a goal. Yeah, I know. It was when I saw his Korean War medals did it connect to me. He did the things that, at the time, I dreamed of doing, for better or worse. He was the man that was supposed to be there forever, and he was like me too. What about me? It was a week later, on that swing I mentioned at the start, where I had the most profound thought that I had in ages. I will die, and I wondered if I would create the same horrifying emotion within others that I felt within myself upon seeing his death. What would happen when I die? What would my shadow be? For ages, I grappled with that thought. During college, these fears manifested as the fear of dying itself, but then they managed to fade through focusing on life itself. I graduated during COVID, never walking the stage but having my name on a single slide of a PowerPoint. Then I failed to find housing and had to room with a friend's family. There, the fear transformed from how will I die to how will I live? And that fear followed me through my tenure at an assembly plant where I was a manufacturing engineer, living in my family's new home after they moved to the States, after I moved a second time. It arose once more when my grandma, dying from dementia on the other side of the family, passed away after a fitful and violent ending to her life, having to be sedated to sleep, still twitching and fighting even when under. That broke me, and I found myself unable to work anymore for the time being, and I quit my job at the factory in January. I left my family home, tried to make it work in another city before blowing through my entire 401k in a few months. Then I had to move to Cali with my other side of the family, where I am now, and have been trying to recover since. I found a job in that time, and I lost the job in that time, and heaven knows I'm miserable now, as the song goes. Death wasn't on my mind at that point. It was implicit in my soul. All my fears have manifested from the fear of death since then, worries of my legacy upon the world, and the mistakes I made in my life before and during. But after months of effort, after losing that same job I mentioned before and reaching the midnight of my soul months later, I realized I was running from death all the same. As soon as I was able to put it into words, I wrote it down, and it is this script you may be hearing that contains them. Fear of death manifests in different ways, as I view it mainly through the view of permanency. I am no individual gifted in the nature of psychology, but I have sat with my mind long enough to identify the ways the fear of death manifests within me. The first is the fear of failure. This one is a common feeling to many and involves permanency of your actions. All your actions are permanent, but may be well less noticeable than you may have come to believe. Hence, life as a shadow rather than the body itself that you're in. As we are the biggest thing in our own view, simply because the eyes always see yourself in your actions, the fear of failure is the one the ego brings up to do our best, so to speak. Since people tend to view things in a negative filter, looking for the wrongs rather than the rights, fear of failure is the double negative. It is also an expectation of success. But as many found out through too high expectations, both can happen. You can succeed and fail in the same stroke, the same set of actions. Failure is an all or nothing view, and likewise, that means success is nothing or all. If you always expect success, then of course that fear will be the negative shadow of it. No matter your strengths and knowledge available, you can still fail. Running from failure was me running to what I thought was success. I didn't want to be where I was in life when I died, only for things to worsen due to expecting success from my actions then. I'm lucky in a sense to not have died as a lesson to others for this fear. In a way, surviving alone has been a success and allowed many to see my life, but merely a shadow in theirs. Another aspect that it manifested as is a fear of irrelevancy. Sure, if you get past the fear of failure and the expectation of success, that leads you to another hurdle, the fear of irrelevancy and the expectation of impact. You may want to bring change to the world. You may want to be the top name of all the lists you endeavor to be on, or you may just want to be known to loved ones before you pass on. You expect to be somewhere, the name on someone's lips and the thoughts within their mind. You expect to exist outside of your own body. But hold on a minute. Think of this. Who are you thinking of right now? If I'm lucky, you may be thinking of me talking, but most likely it's of yourself. How this video can help you. How you can benefit from assuaging and conquering your fears. Or you may actually be thinking of a loved one, a hated one, or someone that you met in passing and never saw or will see again except through unparalleled coincidence. Either way, did you notice it before it was brought up? Their life's shadow was upon you too. When I left my job, I wanted to find a place to have a greater impact than I did before. I was expecting my ability to be one that demanded relevancy. But as I found out through my own lack of knowledge and strength, that relevancy, as I expected it to be, was much harder to attain than I thought. I now know I'm still relevant, but like everyone else is, a shadow on the wall while my life goes on. The final one that I've identified in myself is fear of pain and the expectation of painlessness. It's one that followed me the most. My great-grandfather fell out of bed, struck his head, then he was dead. He passed before I was able to say goodbye, and that caused pain itself. But actually going through life with the view that death is pain likewise means that pain is death to you, and that pain in life is death in life. If your mind links it in one way, it links it the other way, even if it's illogical. The running from pain was the biggest thing that I was doing in reaction to death. I fell into addiction and lethargy, and let my expectation of painlessness be nearly my own undoing. No one else will experience your pain. Your life is, as I've repeated plenty of times in this script, a shadow in others, blocking light in a meaningful way and leaving a shaded outline of yourself. You may be seen having pain, but no one will feel it but you. Your pain is true, yes, but is yours alone to bear. Therefore, seeing others with seemingly painless lives only shows the shadow of painlessness. You will never truly know what they're going through, and the same is for you. Now we are here. In between leaving home and now, I found a job in that time, as I mentioned before. One that was fulfilling, but due to budget cuts, I was one of the first to go. My manager wanted me to stay on as long as they could, and I had the appreciation and kindness of coworkers to encourage me in my future efforts, but that was over 7 months ago. I had to stare the idea of permanency in the face once more after experiencing the longest time without a job or education. Thankfully, I've learned a few tactics to help me get through it. For one, I do the thing first, the way I need to, without the expectation of relevancy, of painlessness, and of success. If I were to say that to me a few months ago, I would have balked. Being without those means you will be irrelevant, in pain, and failing, right? But if you want to do something without those fears, you must go without their expectations as well. Is that expectation of painlessness and relevant success in these words now? In some ways, yes. I still feel the fears manifesting within me. But push on I must. If you want these fears to become tolerable enough to do the things you want to do, you have to expect some form of them to potentially emerge, and do what you must to get around them. For me, that's doing the thing. No one will see the expectations you had on your journey, even if you voice them. All they'll truly see is the results. Second is a phrase you may have seen plastered everywhere over YouTube, or at least for me. I ignored it heavily, thinking it was something not relevant to me, until after I realized how much it helped me to follow it. And that was create systems, not goals. My explanation is the point of creating the system is to make the effort easier, slipping into what you need to do and want to do easier without hurdles. But another point of it is goal setting, or the lack of it, and how that leads to the expectations I mentioned before. Setting a goal implies that you expect to satisfy it, and that leads to likewise fear of not doing so, of failure, of irrelevancy, of pain. Those three manifested fears are most visible when you do not craft your systems to help obfuscate them, instead focus on results. Results that may never perfectly match your visions. The only thing that people will see is the results of your system in your life. No one can really see a goal, can they? The most powerful tactic I've been feeling is sitting with these thoughts. I mentioned the method in an earlier video called Can You Say I Love Myself? And the process is similar, acknowledging the thoughts and emotions both. See how they feel and make you feel, and slowly go back to doing what you must or desire to do. It's again, as I see it, meditation, and it's a reflection you need to build your subjective strengths and knowledge both with your own eye, rather than always needing someone else's feedback, though the latter is paramount to knowing where to set your eye to in the first place. Medicine, therapy, and then later self-guided meditation helped me get to being able to sit with the fear of death often, seeing where it leads me to, and moving on from that path. No one can see you sitting with thoughts. They'll only see the result of sitting. Your mind is hidden in shadow that only you can see through, and to me that means you must work within the shadow of life to achieve what you want your life to show and be. The results are still ongoing. I finally labeled the fear of death when the 10th of August came about, and still I was without a job, even though temp agencies and applying to everywhere likewise went nowhere. But it was one I noticed after tending to the stock of the roots, through combating the fears that manifested from death, before I was to put a name to it as the fear of death itself. At that point, I wrote a few scripts that I felt weren't worth putting onto YouTube. That fear of the blank canvas remaining forever blank, or just as well blank forever. But I'm heavily enjoying the results of this one. If you hear my voice reading over this, then I clearly got to the point where I wanted to release my work without the feel of failure onto YouTube once more. Could this video still not meet my expectations? But of course. I'm creating again, however, and my expectations are dropping in a healthy and meaningful way. That's the first major hurdle I wanted to conquer. Seeing work that I've done manifested into the world again is a beautiful thing. Another thing is that I'm creating with noted view on the fear of death. Being able to sit and listen to it has helped me become more acquainted with how that fear shows up in my own creative process. I see it less as a threat to demolish my expectations, but more like a little creature that shows up in the landscape of my thoughts, like seeing a coyote in the desert that you take note of before it runs away back into the shrubs. Could be dangerous? Yes, if the coyote gets too close, but you should have noted it for a long while. So it may not be a problem by that point. And if it's that close to be a problem, you might as well listen to the thoughts as a threat in the first place. The biggest one, though, is that the results I create are ones without regret. Reframe my fears as expectations, which shows their irrationality, means that I can create once more while knowing the fears I had before are well and truly distant. Regret, the feel of failing to meet my expectations of myself, have likewise greatly diminished. In a sense, I can say I create without regret now, and that's the most beautiful thing in my life at the moment. It helps me continue. So, if you were to come away with something from this video, which I hope you do, what would that be? You, in this example, fear death in some form, from the pain of it, the permanency, the idea of irrelevancy and failure permanently staying with you for all eternity, or at the very least, your creations. Here's 3 things I'd offer. 1. Face the fear itself. This is the hardest thing to do when fear brings out its full arsenal of emotional impact that you might have already been running from. But realize that those things you've been running from are from the expectation that they shouldn't be there. Let them exist, and you can survive the initial pain and see through to it what needs doing. You'll be able to see your shadow and make sense of it. Second is lowering those expectations. Accepting death is an art form, hence the title. Your first attempts will be like a new artist starting their first works, and they will most likely be poor attempts. But you'll learn to lower the expectation of death, the expectation of complete success and relevancy and painlessness. You'll be able to accept more of it with time. It will become easier, like how an artist becomes better at their craft over time. You will come to accept your shadow as it is. Third and final is to ease the fears. Become relevant imperfectly, ease your pain imperfectly, and succeed imperfectly. Likewise, face death imperfectly, failure imperfectly, pain imperfectly, irrelevancy imperfectly. These will build your subjective strengths, as I've mentioned in multiple videos before, to handle it over time. You will understand yourself through time and effort and be able to face your own inevitable death without the fear behind it. You will finally craft your shadow to what you want it to be over time, every step of the way. So the conclusion is the art of dying is one at some point you have to learn. Death, as the end of life, can manifest itself in all our conscious actions and choices that leave their own marks of what we assume death to be. But that's because we expect something more out of everything we do, a qualitative one rather than something quantitative. Expecting perfection in this life, which I've mentioned in the Strength and Knowledge video as before, impossible. It's common to have a fear of death, but it's not as common to overcome it. To live without dying is to live without forever. To live without the fear of dying is to live without the fear of forever. One is impossible, the other is not only possible but freeing. It's been something I've been embracing as I've come to points in my life where I feel like my life is a shadow, only a figment of something being there. But being able to overcome this fear may give me the strength to continue, with death no longer being an obstacle, but something to take note of. My shadow will live on as long as I do, and others will notice its presence, even if it's that I have been there at some point. If this is on YouTube, I hope this resonates with you and helps to achieve the same motivation and desire to continue as it had in me. I believe in you. Jaeger Dominus, signing off.